We're now going to turn our attention to another key operator in Project Reactor's Flux class. As you may recall from our earlier discussion of the doOnNext action operator in a previous lesson, action operators don't modify a flux, but instead use it only for side effects. We're going to talk about the doFinally action operator now. This operator adds a behavior that's triggered after the flux terminates for any reason, including cancellation. The parameter that's passed is called when the flux signals on error or on complete, or is disposed by the downstream. As you can see, this parameter is called onFinally and is of type consumer, parameterized by signal type. A consumer, as I'm sure you recall from our earlier discussions, is a Java 8 functional interface that has a single method called apply. And it's typically used for callback operations, as it is here. doFinally returns a flux that's unchanged. In other words, it's only used for its side effects. The doFinally operator doesn't operate by default on any particular scheduler. It'll run in whatever context it was called as part of the flux stream up to that point. To reiterate the point we made earlier, the doFinally operator cannot change the type nor the value of the elements that it processes. Here's an example we'll look at in more detail when we get to the case study at the end of this lesson. What this snippet of code is showing is how we're creating a new scheduler called a subscriber, which is a single thread we're going to be using to do subscription processing. And then we create a flux stream using the flux create factory method, which calls make async flux stream, which will run processing in a background thread, which is publishing data. And that data that's being published will come into this flux stream where it will be published on the subscriber thread. And the doFinally operator that's called here at the bottom is going to be invoked after the flux completes. And its purpose is essentially to clean up the resources that were created that need to be cleaned up. In this particular case, what's being cleaned up is the subscriber scheduler thread where the subscription processing is running. And we need to clean that up because otherwise that thread will hang around and the program won't terminate. RxJava has an observable doFinally operator that works in exactly the same way that Project Reactor's doFinally action operator works. The particular example that we show here, which we'll cover when we get to RxJava later in the course, demonstrates how you can create a stream and observe on it in a new thread. And then when we're all done with the processing of this stream, we go ahead and have the doFinally method print out the big integers that were generated by the stream to aid in debugging and logging. So different use case, but also demonstrating how doFinally can be used in the same way for the same sorts of things in both Project Reactor and RxJava. So that wraps up our coverage of the action operators for Flux, and you'll get a chance to see how these get applied later when we look at the case study.